What happens when the person you trust the most shatters your world with betrayal? In this gripping tale, I reveal the shocking moment I discovered my wife's affair and the emotional turmoil that followed. Join me as I navigate the pain of betrayal, confront the man who stole my happiness, and fight for justice. This is a story of heartbreak, resilience, and ultimately, finding the strength to reclaim my life. Don't miss the dramatic twists and turns that led me to an unexpected journey of self-discovery. As the elevator doors slid apart, I stepped out onto the 14th floor of Nexus Technologies, my mind racing with thoughts about the presentation ahead. Being a mid-level executive meant I had invested weeks into preparing for this moment, fine-tuning every little detail until it was just right. But as I made my way to my office, a wave of dread washed over me like a punch to the gut. Crap, I muttered under my breath, realizing I had left the vital financial projections back at home. Without those papers, the whole meeting could come crashing down. I glanced at my watch, 8:45 a.m. The meeting was scheduled for 10:30. If I hurried, I might be able to make it back just in time. "Hey, Ryan," my colleague, Emily, called out as I rushed past her desk. "Everything all right?" "I forgot some important documents at home," I replied, not slowing down. "I need to run back and grab them." "Want me to stall the board?" she offered. I shook my head. "Thanks, but I'll be fine. Just hold down the fort for me." While I waited for the elevator, my foot tapped impatiently against the polished floor. Finally, the doors opened, and I darted inside, jabbing the lobby button over and over. The drive home was a chaotic blur of honking horns and near misses. As I maneuvered through Boston's morning traffic, I pulled into my driveway, tires screeching, not even bothering to straighten out my haphazard parking job. Fumbling with my keys at the front door, I felt a nagging unease wash over me. Something just didn't feel right. The house was too quiet, lacking the usual morning sounds of Mia getting ready for her day at the art gallery. Pushing the door open, I strained my ears for any sign of life. That's when I heard it, a faint murmur of voices coming from upstairs. My heart began to race, a cold sweat forming on my forehead. "Mia!" I called out, my voice echoing in the silence of the house. No answer. With every step up the stairs, the voices became clearer. A deep male voice, followed by Mia's breathless laughter. My hands balled into fists, knuckles turning white from tension. When I reached our bedroom door, my palm rested on the cool metal doorknob. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. What I saw burned itself into my memory like a branding iron. There was Mia, her golden hair sprawled across the pillows, tangled up in the arms of a man I'd never seen before. His muscular frame enveloped her naked body. For a moment, time froze. Then, chaos erupted. "Connor!" Mia shrieked, scrambling to cover herself with the sheets. The man beside her shot up, his eyes wide with panic. "What the hell is going on?" I roared, my vision turning red with rage. The man, a tall, dark-haired guy, clearly younger than me, stumbled out of bed, frantically looking for his clothes. "Look, man, I had no idea she was married." "I swear to God," he stammered. I turned to Mia, my voice dangerously low, "Is that true? Have you been lying to him, or have you been lying to me all along?" Mia's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Connor, please. Calm down." "Save it," I spat, shifting my gaze to the man, who was now hastily pulling on his pants. "What's your name?" He hesitated, glancing between Mia and me. Jake Thompson." "Well, Jake," I said, my tone laced with venom, "I suggest you get the hell out of my house before I do something we'll both regret." Jake didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his shirt and shoes, practically sprinting past me and down the stairs. The front door slammed shut moments later, leaving Mia and me alone in the suffocating silence of our bedroom. I looked at her, the woman I'd loved and trusted for 5 years, and felt nothing but disgust. How long? I demanded. Mia clutched the sheets to her chest, her voice barely a whisper. Connor, please, stop this and cool down. How long? I repeated, emphasizing each word. She flinched at my tone. 3 months, she admitted, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. 3 months, 90 days of lies, of betrayal, of making a fool out of me. I thought back to all the late nights at the gallery, the sudden influx of work events she claimed she had to attend. It all clicked into place now. I want you gone, I said, my voice void of emotion. Pack your things and leave, now. Mia's eyes widened in panic. Connor, no, please. We can work this out. I love you. It was a stupid mistake, but I swear it won't happen again. I let out a harsh, bitter laugh that seemed to come from somewhere outside myself. Love? You don't even know what that means. If you loved me, you wouldn't have slept with another man in our bed. I walked over to the closet, yanked out a suitcase, and tossed it onto the bed. You have an hour. Anything you leave behind, I'll burn. Mia scrambled out of bed, wrapping the sheet around herself as she approached me. Baby, please, don't do this. We can go to counseling, we can work through this. I'll do anything. I stepped back, putting distance between us. The thought of her touching me made my skin crawl. The time for that is long gone, Mia. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. As I turned to leave the room, Mia's sobs echoed behind me. Once, the sound of her crying would have shattered my heart. Now, it only stoked the flames of my anger. I made my way to my home office, my initial task forgotten in the wake of this shocking revelation. The financial documents for my meeting lay on the desk, taunting me with their mundane significance. It was incredible how quickly priorities could shift. My phone buzzed in my pocket, likely Ryan checking in to see where I was. I ignored it, sinking into my chair as the full weight of what had just transpired crashed down on me. My marriage was over. The life I had built, the future I had envisioned, all of it had vanished in an instant. And for what? A fleeting thrill with another man? I heard Mia moving around upstairs, drawers opening and closing as she packed. Good. The sooner she was gone, the better. As I sat there, listening to the death throes of my marriage, I made a vow to myself, I would never allow anyone to hurt me like this again. Mia had exploited my trust, my love, my devotion. She had played me for a fool, but that would no longer be the case. From this moment on, I would be relentless in guarding myself, and if the chance for revenge presented itself, well, I wouldn't hesitate to seize it. The sound of Mia's footsteps on the stairs pulled me from my dark thoughts. I stood up, squaring my shoulders as I braced for one last confrontation. I emerged from my office to find Mia standing at the foot of the stairs, her suitcase beside her. She'd thrown on a sundress, her hair hastily pulled back into a messy ponytail. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, but I felt no sympathy. She had brought this on herself. Connor, she began, her voice trembling. Please, can we talk about this? I know I made a terrible mistake, but 5 years of marriage has to count for something. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms over my chest. You're right, Mia. It does count for something. It counts for 5 years of my life wasted on a lying, cheating wife. She flinched at my words, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But I love you, Connor. What we have is worth fighting for. What we had, I corrected her, my voice icy. And clearly, it wasn't worth much to you if you were willing to toss it aside for a quick fling with some random guy. It wasn't like that. Mia protested. Jake, it was just physical, I swear. You're the one I love. I laughed, the sound harsh and bitter. Oh, so that makes it all better. You only betrayed me physically, not emotionally. Give me a break, Mia. She took a step toward me, her hand outstretched. Baby, please. I'll do anything to make this right. We can go to couples therapy. Take some time apart if that's what you need. Just don't throw away everything we've built together. I recoiled from her touch, disgust churning in my gut. Don't call me that. You lost the right to any terms of endearment the moment you let another man into our bed. Mia's face crumpled, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I'm so sorry, Connor. I never meant to hurt you like this. It was a moment of weakness, a stupid mistake. Please, just give me one more chance. A moment of weakness? I echoed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You've been sleeping with this guy for 3 months. That's not a moment. That's a calculated decision. Every time you lied about working late, every time you came home smelling of his cologne, those were all choices you made. She shook her head frantically. No, it wasn't like that. I tried to end it so many times, but... But what? I interrupted. He was just too irresistible. His skills were just too good to give up. Save your excuses, Mia. I'm not interested. I pushed off the wall, moving past her to open the front door. It's time for you to leave. I'll have my lawyer contact you about divorce proceedings. Mia's eyes widened in panic. Divorce? Connor, no. She reached for me again, her fingers grasping at the fabric of my shirt. Please, Connor, I'll do anything. Just tell me what I need to do to fix this. I pried her hands away, my grip firm but not cruel. There's nothing to fix, Mia. You broke it beyond repair. The only thing you can do now is leave. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice small and broken. That's not my problem anymore, I replied, unmoved by her tears. Call your sister, or maybe Jake can put you up. After all, he seemed pretty comfortable in our bed. Mia flinched at the reminder, wrapping her arms around herself as if suddenly cold. Connor, I know you're hurting, but please don't do this. We can get past this if we just try. I shook my head, my resolve firm. I want you out of this house and out of my life. She stood there for a long moment, staring at me with pleading eyes. But I remained unmoved, my gaze steady and cold. Finally, she seemed to accept that there was no changing my mind. With shaking hands, Mia picked up her suitcase. She paused at the threshold, turning back to me one last time. I truly am sorry, Connor. I hope someday you can forgive me. Don't hold your breath, I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. As Mia stepped out onto the porch, watching her walk away should have shattered my heart, but instead, I felt only relief. The door clicked shut behind her with a final, satisfying sound. For a moment, I stood in the silence of our once shared home. Then, methodically, I began to erase every trace of Mia from my life. I gathered her remaining clothes, toiletries, and the framed photos of us that adorned the walls. Everything went into garbage bags, ready to be thrown out or donated. As I worked, my phone buzzed incessantly. Texts and calls from Mia, no doubt begging for another chance. I ignored them all, concentrating on the task at hand. I sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling drained. The events of the morning crashed over me, the discovery, the confrontation, the decision to end my marriage. It all felt surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But this was my new reality. A reality where the woman I had loved and trusted had betrayed me in the worst way possible. A reality where I was alone, starting over at 35. I stood up. I had a life to rebuild, and I wouldn't waste another moment mourning what I had lost. Instead, I would focus on what I could gain: independence, self-respect, and the sweet taste of justice. Let Mia cry and beg. Let her realize the magnitude of what she had thrown away. I was done with her tears, her excuses, her manipulations. From now on, I would look out for myself and myself alone. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I finally decided to dig deeper. Sitting at my desk, I pulled up our shared bank statements, a sick feeling of anticipation twisting in my gut. I knew I'd find something. The real question was, how bad would it be? As I scrolled through months of transactions, patterns began to emerge. Regular withdrawals from ATMs in areas of the city Mia rarely visited, charges at restaurants and hotels I had never heard of. Then, buried among the mundane expenses of our daily lives, I saw it, a series of transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Gotcha, I muttered, my fingers flying over the keyboard as I delved deeper. The account belonged to J.B. Harrison Brooks, the man I'd caught in bed with my wife. Fury rose in me like bile as I tallied up the amounts. Over the past 3 months, Mia had funneled nearly $10,000 to this bastard. You've got to be kidding me, I growled, slamming my fist on the desk. Not only had she cheated, but she had been bankrolling her lover with my hard-earned money. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. This changed everything. It wasn't just an affair anymore, it was financial fraud, and I intended to make her pay for every cent. But I needed more. Bank statements weren't enough. I needed irrefutable proof. With determination, I turned to Mia's laptop, which she had left behind in her hasty exit. I knew her password, a fact that now filled me with bitter irony. How trusting we had been, how open with each other. Never again. I logged into her social media accounts first. There, buried in private messages, I found a goldmine of incriminating evidence. Flirtatious exchanges, explicit photos, plans for secret rendezvous, all laid bare before me. My stomach churned as I read through their conversations, but I forced myself to continue. Each message was another nail in the coffin of my marriage, another piece of ammunition for the battle ahead. Next, I accessed her cloud storage, uncovering more photos, more messages, and even videos. I felt sick, but I downloaded everything, storing it securely on an external hard drive. This was no longer about pain or jealousy, this was about justice. As I sifted through the digital remnants of Mia's betrayal, a name kept popping up alongside Harrison's, Mason Drake. I vaguely remembered him from college. He'd been a computer science major, always tinkering with some new gadget or program. Now, it seemed, he was some sort of cybersecurity expert. I hesitated for a moment, then reached for my phone. If anyone could help me ensure I had gathered all possible evidence, it would be Mason. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Hello, Mason. It's Connor Blake. From Boston. Listen, I need your help with something sensitive. There was a pause on the other end. Connor, wow, it's been years. What's going on? I took a deep breath. My wife's been cheating on me. I found evidence on her accounts, but I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. You're the best tech guy I know. Can you help me? Mason's voice softened with sympathy. Shit, man, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, of course I can help. Want to meet up tomorrow? I can take a look at what you've got. Relief washed over me. That would be great. Thanks, Mason. I owe you one. We made plans to meet at a quiet cafe the next day. As I hung up, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. With Mason's help, I would make sure no stone was left unturned in exposing Mia's deceit. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe early, my laptop and the external hard drive safely tucked in my bag. Mason arrived a few minutes later, his unruly hair and thick-rimmed glasses just as I remembered from our college days. Connor, he said, giving me a friendly clap on the shoulder. Good to see you, man, though I wish it were under better circumstances. I managed a grim smile. Yeah, me too. Thanks for coming. We settled into a quiet corner booth, and as he booted up his laptop, I filled him in on the details. His expression grew increasingly somber as I recounted the events of the past few days. That's rough, buddy, he said when I finished. But don't worry. We'll make sure you have everything you need. Let's take a look at what you've got. For the next 2 hours, Mason sifted through the data I'd collected, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he worked his digital magic. I watched in awe as he accessed hidden files, recovered deleted messages, and pieced together a comprehensive timeline of Mia's betrayal. Well, he said finally, leaning back with a sigh, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is, you've got more than enough evidence here to nail both Mia and this Harrison guy to the wall in a divorce proceeding. I nodded, cold satisfaction settling in my chest. And the bad news? Mason's expression turned serious. The bad news is, this goes deeper than just an affair. Based on some of the messages I've recovered, it looks like Harrison has a pretty shady past, ex-cop, fired for misconduct. And Mia, well, it seems she's been funneling money to him for months. We're talking serious financial fraud here. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd suspected the financial aspect, but hearing it confirmed made it all too real. So what do I do now? I asked, my voice hollow. Mason placed a hand on my shoulder. You need to talk to a lawyer, man. Like yesterday. This is way beyond just a messy divorce. You need to protect yourself, your assets. Everything. I nodded, my mind racing. Yeah, you're right. I know just the guy to call. As we packed up our things, Mason handed me a flash drive. Here's everything I found, organized and cataloged. Should hold up in court if it comes to that. I pocketed the drive, feeling its weight like a talisman against the chaos of my life. Thanks, Mason. I really mean it. I don't know what I would have done without your help. He smiled, but his eyes were serious. Anytime, Connor. And hey, keep me posted, okay? If you need anything else, just call. As I walked out of the cafe, my mind whirled with the implications of what we'd uncovered. Mia hadn't just betrayed our marriage, she'd betrayed everything we'd built together, everything we'd worked for. And Harrison? Who knew what other secrets that bastard was hiding? One thing was certain, this was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. I was determined to make sure that both Mia and Harrison paid for every lie, every betrayal, and every cent they'd stolen from me. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. It was time to call in another old friend. It was time to talk to Jacob Warren, the best damn lawyer I knew. The law offices of Warren and Associates loomed before me, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in downtown Boston. I straightened my tie, took a deep breath, and pushed through the revolving doors. It had been years since I'd seen Jacob, but I knew if anyone could help me navigate the legal minefield ahead, it would be him. The receptionist ushered me into a plush corner office with a view of the harbor. Jacob stood as I entered, his familiar grin a stark contrast to the gravity of the situation. Connor Blake, he said, extending his hand. It's been too long, my friend, though I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. I shook his hand firmly. Thanks for seeing me on such short notice, Jake. He gestured for me to sit. Of course. Now, tell me what's going on. Your message sounded urgent. I sank into the leather chair across from his desk, feeling the weight of the past few days pressing down on me. It's bad, Jake. My wife, Mia, she's been cheating on me. Jacob's expression softened with sympathy. I'm sorry to hear that, Connor. Infidelity cases are never easy, but we can certainly help you with the divorce proceedings. I shook my head. It's more complicated than that. I've uncovered evidence of financial fraud. She's been funneling money to her lover, a guy named Harrison Brooks. Jacob's eyebrows shot up. That changes things. How much are we talking about? At least 10 grand that I know of, I replied, pulling out the flash drive Mason had given me. And there's more. This contains everything I've found so far, financial records, messages, photos. My friend Mason, a cybersecurity expert, helped me recover it all. Jacob took the drive, his expression turning serious. This is good, Connor. Very good. But we need to tread carefully here. If what you're saying is true, we're not just dealing with a divorce case anymore. We could be facing criminal charges. I leaned forward, my voice low and intense. I want to nail them to the wall, Jake. Both of them. They've made a fool of me and stolen from me. I want them to pay. Jacob held up a hand. I understand how you feel, believe me, but we need to approach this strategically. First things first, we need to protect your assets. I'm going to file for an emergency injunction to freeze any joint accounts you have with Mia. We don't want her draining them before we can build our case. I nodded, grateful for his clear-headed approach. What about Harrison? What do we know about him? Jacob turned to his computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. Let's see what we can dig up. Ah, here we go. Harrison Brooks, 32 years old, former police officer with the Boston PD, discharged 3 years ago for, well, looks like Mr. Brooks has quite the colorful past. I leaned in, eager for any information that could help my case. What did you find? Jacob's eyes scanned the screen. Discharged for unethical conduct. There were allegations of evidence tampering and accepting bribes, but nothing stuck. He walked away with just a slap on the wrist. My fists clenched involuntarily. So he's dirty. No surprise there. What's he doing now? According to this, he's self-employed. Runs a food truck business downtown. I snorted. Some career change, from dirty cop to slinging hot dogs. Jacob looked at me seriously. This is good information, Connor. It gives us leverage, but we need to be careful. If Brooks has connections from his time on the force, he could be dangerous. I met his gaze steadily. I'm not afraid of him, Jake. You should be, Jacob replied, his voice grave. Men like that, with nothing left to lose, can be unpredictable. We need to play this smart. I nodded, conceding the point. So what's our next move? Jacob leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. First, we file for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. We'll use the evidence you've gathered to support our claims. Then, we go after Mia for the money she's funneled to Brooks. As for him, well, that's where things get interesting. How so? I asked, intrigued. We could potentially go after him for knowingly accepting fraudulently obtained funds, Jacob explained. But more importantly, we can use the threat of exposure to pressure him. If word gets out about his involvement in this scandal, it could torpedo his business. A cold smile spread across my face. I like the sound of that. Jacob raised a cautioning hand. Remember, Connor, our primary goal here is to protect you and your assets. Revenge might feel good in the moment, but it won't help you in the long run. I nodded, but inwardly, I knew that justice and revenge were intertwined in this case. I understand. So what do we do first? Jacob pulled out a legal pad and began jotting down notes. First, we file the divorce petition and the emergency injunction, then we start building our case. I'm going to need you to gather every scrap of financial information you can find, bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, everything. Consider it done, I said, already mentally cataloging where I could find the information. Good, Jacob replied. Now, there's one more thing we need to consider. We might want to bring in a private investigator to dig deeper into Brooks's background and current activities. The more dirt we have on him, the stronger our position. I raised an eyebrow. You know someone? Jacob nodded. I work with a woman named Nina Collins. She's the best in the business, discreet, thorough, and not afraid to get her hands dirty if necessary. Sounds perfect, I said. Set it up. As we wrapped up our meeting, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. With Jacob's legal expertise and the promise of Nina's investigative skills, I finally felt like I was regaining control of the situation. Thanks, Jake, I said as we shook hands. I don't know what I'd do without you. He smiled, but his eyes were serious. That's what friends are for, Connor. But remember, this is going to be a long, tough road. Are you sure you're ready for what's ahead? I met his gaze steadily. More than ready. They think they can walk all over me, Jake. It's time to show them just how wrong they are. As I left Jacob's office, my phone buzzed with another message from Mia. I deleted it without reading. Let her beg and plead. Soon enough, she'd realized that her tears meant nothing to me anymore. The game had changed, and I was playing for keeps now. With Jacob and Nina on my side, I was ready to take on whatever Mia and Harrison could throw at me. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of legal filings, evidence gathering, and strategy sessions. Jacob worked tirelessly to build our case while Nina delved deep into Harrison's current activities. As for me, I threw myself into my work, using it as a shield against the constant flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. It was during one of our regular meetings at Jacob's office that things took an unexpected turn. Nina burst in, her eyes sparkling with excitement. You're not going to believe what I found, she said, dropping a thick file on Jacob's desk. I leaned forward, eager for any new information. What is it? Nina grinned, a predatory glint in her eye. Turns out our friend Harrison isn't just a small-time food truck operator. He's been running his business without proper permits or health inspections for months. Jacob's eyebrows shot up. That's a serious violation. How has he gotten away with it for so long? My guess? He's calling in favors from his old buddies on the force, Nina replied. But here's the kicker, I've got documented proof of at least 3 instances where he bribed health inspectors to look the other way. A slow smile spread across my face. This is perfect. We can use this to put pressure on him. Jacob raised a cautioning hand. Easy, Connor. We need to be careful how we proceed. If we're not subtle about this, it could backfire on us. I waved away his concerns. No, Jake, this is exactly what we need. Think about it, we report these violations to the authorities, and suddenly Harrison's little empire comes crashing down. No more income means no more support for Mia. They'll both be scrambling. Nina nodded approvingly. I like the way you think, Connor. Hit him where it hurts. Jacob sighed, but I could see the wheels turning in his mind. All right, I can see the potential here, but we need to approach this carefully. We can't be seen as the ones behind the report, or it could jeopardize our legal standing. Leave that to me, Nina said confidently. I've got contacts in the health department who owe me a favor or two. We can make sure the tip comes from an anonymous concerned citizen. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Finally, we were taking the fight to them. Do it, I said firmly. Let's see how they like having their lives turned upside down for a change. As Nina left to set things in motion, Jacob turned to me with a serious expression. Connor, I need to ask, are you sure about this? Once we start down this road, there's no turning back. I met his gaze steadily. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Jake. Jacob nodded, a hint of admiration in his eyes. All right then, let's do this. Over the next few days, we watched from a distance as our plan unfolded. True to her word, Nina's contacts came through. Health inspectors descended on Harrison's food truck, finding a laundry list of violations. The fines started piling up, and soon his business was shuttered. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction as I read the news reports. It was a small victory, but it felt good to finally be the one calling the shots. As predicted, the loss of income hit both Harrison and Mia hard. My phone was flooded with increasingly desperate messages from Mia, begging for a chance to explain, to work things out. I deleted them all without replying. It was during this time that I received an unexpected call from a mutual friend. Sarah Connor. Hey, I don't know if you've heard, but it's Mia's birthday next week. There's going to be a small gathering at her sister's place. I know things are rough between you two, but I thought you should know. I thanked Sarah for the information, my mind already racing with possibilities. This could be the perfect opportunity to confront Mia, to lay all our cards on the table in front of her family and friends. When I broached the idea with Jacob, he was understandably hesitant. Connor, I'm not sure that's wise. Emotions will be running high, and anything you say could potentially be used against you in court. I leaned forward, my eyes blazing with determination. Jake, this is our chance to expose her in front of everyone she cares about, to show them who she really is. Jacob sighed, rubbing his temples. I understand the appeal, but it's risky. If you lose your cool, if you say the wrong thing, it could jeopardize everything we've been working toward. I won't lose control, I assured him. I'll be calm and collected, but I want her to see the consequences of her actions. I want her to feel the weight of her betrayal in front of everyone she loves. After a long moment, Jacob nodded reluctantly. All right, but we need to prepare. Every word, every piece of evidence you present needs to be carefully chosen. We spent the next few days meticulously planning my approach. Jacob coached me on what to say, what evidence to reveal, and how to maintain my composure in the face of potential emotional outbursts. The night of Mia's birthday party arrived. I wasn't invited, but I stood outside her sister's house, steeling myself for what was to come. Through the windows, I could see the gathering inside, laughter, music, the clink of glasses. Mia's perfectly curated world was about to come crashing down. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Mia's sister, Emily, opened the door, her eyes widening in shock. Connor, what are you doing here? I offered her a tight smile. I'm here to wish Mia a happy birthday. May I come in? Confusion and uncertainty flickered on Emily's face, but social niceties won out. She stepped aside, allowing me to enter. The party fell silent as I walked in, all eyes turning toward me. Mia stood frozen in the center of the room, her face pale with shock. Connor, she whispered, what are you doing here? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I couldn't miss your birthday, could I? After all, we have so much to celebrate. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as I moved to the center of the room. Mia's parents, her friends, everyone watched with a mix of confusion and growing unease. What's going on? Mia's father demanded. Connor, what is this about? I turned to address the room. I'm sorry to interrupt the festivities, but there's something you all need to know, something Mia's been keeping from you. Mia stepped forward, her voice trembling. Connor, please. Not here. Not like this. Ignoring her, I pulled out my phone. For the past 3 months, Mia has been having an affair with a man named Harrison Brooks. She's been lying to all of you, to me, and she's been stealing money to support her lover. Gasps and exclamations of disbelief filled the room. Mia's mother clutched her chest, while her father's face turned red with anger. That's ridiculous, Mia protested weakly. Connor, you're making a scene. Am I? I replied coolly, holding up my phone. I played a series of voicemails and displayed text messages that left no doubt about the affair. As the evidence mounted, I watched the color drain from Mia's face. Her friends and family looked on in horror and disgust. How could you? Emily whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Mia's father stepped forward, his voice shaking with rage. Is this true, Mia? Have you been lying to all of us? Mia crumpled to her knees, sobs racking her body. I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I stood there, watching as her carefully constructed world fell apart around her. "Happy birthday, Mia," I said quietly. "I hope it was worth it." With that, I turned and walked out, leaving behind a chorus of angry voices and broken trust. As I drove home, my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Mia's family and friends. I ignored them all. My part was done. The truth was out. I called Jacob as soon as I got home. "It's done," I told him. "Everyone knows now." "How do you feel?" he asked cautiously. I paused, considering. "Good," I admitted. It needed to be done. No more lies, no more secrets. Everyone should know about her betrayal and who she really is. "Get some rest," Jacob advised. Tomorrow, we move forward with the next phase of our plan. The truth was out, and there was no going back. All that was left now was to see this through to the end. The fallout from Mia's birthday party was swift and merciless. Within hours, social media was ablaze with the scandal. Friends and family who had once doted on Mia now turned their backs, their shock and disgust palpable even through the digital grapevine. I sat in my home office, scrolling through the barrage of messages and posts. Part of me felt satisfaction. My phone rang. It was Jacob. "Connor," he said as soon as I picked up. "How are you holding up?" I sighed, rubbing my eyes. "I'm fine, Jacob. Listen, I've been monitoring the situation. The social fallout is significant. Mia's reputation is in tatters." "Good," I said, surprised by the vehemence in my own voice. "She made her bed. Now she can lie in it." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Connor. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but we need to stay focused on our end goal here." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I know, Jake. What's our next move?" "We press our advantage," he said firmly. "With Mia's support system crumbling, she's more vulnerable than ever. We use this momentum to push for a favorable divorce settlement." As we discussed strategy, my other line beeped. It was Nina. "Jake, I've got to take this." "It's Nina. I'll call you back." I switched lines. "Nina, what's up?" "Connor." Nina's voice was charged with excitement. "I've got something big. Remember how we shut down Harrison's food truck business?" "Yeah, of course. Well, it turns out that was just the tip of the iceberg. I've been digging deeper into his finances, and I've uncovered a whole network of illegal operations. We're talking money laundering, tax evasion, the works." I sat up straighter, my pulse quickening. "Are you sure about this?" "Positive," Nina replied. "I've got the documents to prove it. This isn't just about your divorce anymore, Connor. This is serious criminal activity." My mind raced with the implications. "What do we do with this information?" "That's up to you," Nina said. "We could turn it over to the authorities, but that might complicate your divorce proceedings. Or we could use it as leverage against Harrison and, by extension, Mia." I thought for a moment, weighing our options. "Let me talk to Jacob. We need to approach this carefully." After hanging up with Nina, I immediately called Jacob back to fill him in on this new development. "This changes everything," Jacob mused. "With this kind of leverage, we could potentially negotiate a much more favorable settlement." "But at what cost?" I asked. "If we don't report this, aren't we complicit in his crimes?" Jacob was quiet for a moment. "Not necessarily. We could use the threat of exposure to force a quick, quiet settlement. Once that's done, we can anonymously tip off the authorities." I nodded slowly, seeing the logic in his plan. "All right, let's do it. Set up a meeting with Mia and her lawyer. It's time to end this." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Jacob and I meticulously went over every detail of our strategy while Nina compiled a damning dossier on Harrison's illegal activities. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. I sat across from Mia and her lawyer in Jacob's conference room, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and dread. Mia looked terrible, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. For a split second, I felt a twinge of pity. Then I remembered everything she'd done, and my resolve hardened. "Let's get straight to the point," Jacob began. "We have evidence of serious criminal activity on the part of Mr. Brooks, activity that, I'm sure, Ms. Blake would prefer not become public knowledge." Mia's lawyer leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What kind of evidence?" Jacob slid a folder across the table. "See for yourself." As Mia and her lawyer pored over the documents, I watched the color drain from her face. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear and disbelief. "Connor," she whispered. "I had no idea. You have to believe me." I met her gaze coldly. "It doesn't matter what you knew or didn't know, Mia. What matters is what happens next." Jacob laid out our terms, a quick, quiet divorce, with Mia relinquishing any claim to our shared assets. In return, we would keep Harrison's illegal activities under wraps. Mia's lawyer sputtered and protested, but I could see the fight draining out of Mia with each passing moment. "Just sign the papers, Mia," I said quietly. "End this now before things get even worse." After what felt like an eternity, Mia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll sign." As we watched Mia put pen to paper, I felt a complex mix of emotions, relief and satisfaction. But as we left the conference room, those feelings quickly transformed into a sense of determination. This chapter of my life was closing, but the story wasn't over yet. There was still the matter of Harrison Brooks to deal with. I turned to Jacob and Nina, who had been waiting outside. "It's done," I said. "Now let's make that anonymous tip to the authorities. It's time Harrison faced the music for his crimes." As we walked out of the building, I felt lighter than I had in months. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was back in control of my life. The game had changed, and I had won. I sat in my home office, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating the darkened room. It was late, but sleep eluded me as it had for weeks. The divorce was finalized, Mia was out of my life, and Harrison's world was crumbling thanks to our anonymous tip to the authorities. I should have felt victorious, but instead, a restless energy throbbed through my veins. A knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. I glanced at the clock, 11:47 p.m. Who could be here at this hour? As I approached the front door, a sense of unease crept over me. Through the peephole, I saw a familiar face that made my blood run cold. Harrison Brooks stood on my porch, his expression a mask of barely contained rage. I stepped back, my mind racing. Should I call the police? Before I could decide, a deafening crash filled the air as Harrison kicked in the door. "Blake," he roared, storming into my home. "You ruined everything." I retreated to my office, slamming the door shut and fumbling for my phone. I dialed the first number I saw, it was Jacob's. I heard Harrison's heavy footsteps approaching. "Jake," I hissed as soon as he picked up. "Harrison's here. He's lost it. I need urgent help." The office door splintered as Harrison's foot connected with it. I dropped the phone, backing away as he entered, a wild look in his eyes and a gun in his hand. "You thought you were so clever, didn't you?" Harrison snarled, waving the weapon. "Turning Mia against me, destroying my business. But you didn't stop there, did you? You had to go and tip off the cops about my side hustles." I held up my hands, trying to keep my voice steady. "Harrison, think about what you're doing. This isn't going to solve anything." He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Solve? There's nothing left to solve, Blake. You've taken everything from me, my girl, my livelihood, my freedom. Now I'm going to take something from you. As Harrison raised the gun, time seemed to slow. I could hear Jacob's tinny voice coming from the phone on the floor, calling my name. In that moment, I realized I had a choice: cower in fear or face this head-on. I chose the latter. You're pathetic, Harrison, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. You blame me for your downfall. Take a good look in the mirror. You're the one who chose to break the law. You're the one who decided to sleep with a married woman. Everything that's happening to you, that's on you. Harrison's hand trembled, his finger tightening on the trigger. Shut up. You don't know anything about me, about what Mia and I had. I took a step forward, emboldened by his uncertainty. I know enough. I know you're a coward who preys on vulnerable women. I know you're a criminal who thinks he's above the law. And I know that right now, you're terrified because you finally have to face the consequences of your actions. For a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to him, his arm lowered slightly, doubt flickering across his face. But then his features hardened once more. Nice try, Blake, he growled. But it's too late for mind games. Say goodbye. As Harrison steadied his aim, a commotion erupted from downstairs. The sound of splintering wood and shouted commands filled the air. Police! Drop your weapon! Harrison's eyes widened in panic. He spun toward the door, gun still raised. I saw my opportunity and took it. I lunged forward, tackling Harrison just as the first officers reached the top of the stairs. We crashed to the ground, the gun skittering across the floor. Harrison fought like a cornered animal, but years of pent-up rage gave me a strength I didn't know I possessed. As the police pulled us apart, I caught a glimpse of Jacob in the hallway, his face pale with worry. Our eyes met, and I gave him a small nod. It was over. The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements and medical checks. By the time the sun rose, Harrison was in custody, facing a laundry list of charges that would ensure he'd be behind bars for a very long time. As the last police car pulled away, Jacob approached me, concern etched on his face. Connor, are you all right? When I heard Harrison on the phone, I feared the worst. I nodded, feeling surprisingly calm despite the night's events. I'm fine, Jake. Better than fine. Actually, for the first time in months, I feel free. Jacob clasped my shoulder, relief evident in his eyes. You handled yourself incredibly well in there. But let's not tempt fate again, all right? From now on, we do this by the book. I couldn't help but chuckle. Agreed. I think I've had enough excitement to last a lifetime. As we walked back into my house, surveying the damage from the break-in, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Harrison was gone. Mia was out of my life, and I had survived it all. Whatever came next, I knew I could handle it. The day after Harrison's violent intrusion, I found myself back in Jacob's office, recounting the events of the previous night. Nina was there too, her face a mix of concern and admiration as I described the confrontation. You're lucky to be alive, Connor, Nina said, shaking her head. Harrison was always a loose cannon. But I never thought he'd go this far. Jacob nodded gravely. This changes things. We need to reevaluate our strategy moving forward. Before we could discuss further, Jacob's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his eyebrows rising in surprise. It's Mia, he said, looking at me. She's downstairs. Says she needs to talk to us urgently. I felt a flicker of annoyance. What could she possibly have to say now? Only one way to find out, Jacob replied, already dialing his receptionist to send Mia up. Moments later, Mia burst into the office, her face pale and drawn. She stopped short when she saw me, her eyes widening in surprise. Connor, she breathed. I didn't expect you to be here. I crossed my arms, fixing her with a cold stare. What do you want, Mia? She wrung her hands nervously, glancing between Jacob, Nina, and me. I heard about what happened with Harrison. I came as soon as I found out. I need to tell you something, all of you. Jacob gestured to an empty chair. Sit down, Mia. Tell us what's going on. Mia sank into the chair, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. I've been lying, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. To all of you, about everything. I felt my jaw clench. What are you talking about? Mia took a deep breath, seeming to steel herself. Harrison, he wasn't just my lover. He was blackmailing me. Has been for months. The room fell silent as we absorbed this information. Finally, Nina spoke up. Blackmailing you how? Mia's eyes filled with tears. He had evidence of me embezzling money from the art gallery where I worked. It started small, just a little here and there to cover some debts. But it spiraled out of control. Harrison found out somehow, and he threatened to expose me unless I did what he said. I felt a cold fury building inside me. So you decided to cheat on me and steal our money to pay him off. How is that any better? I was scared, she replied, her voice trembling. Ava cried. I didn't know what to do. Harrison said if I didn't cooperate, he'd make sure I went to jail. He told me to tell you that you'd assaulted me, to turn you into the villain. Jacob leaned forward, his expression grave. Ava, you realize what you're saying is very serious. You're admitting to multiple crimes here. She nodded, wiping away tears. I know. I'm prepared to face the consequences. I couldn't let Connor take the fall for Harrison's actions. Not after everything I've done. I stood up abruptly, needing to put some distance between myself and Ava. My mind was reeling from these revelations. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that she hadn't willingly betrayed me, but the larger part, the part that had been hurt and angry for so long, wasn't ready to forgive. Why now? I demanded, turning back to face her. Why come clean after all this time? Ava looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. Because I realized what a monster Harrison really is. When I heard he tried to kill you, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. You deserve to know the truth, even if it means I lose everything. Nina cleared her throat. This changes things. If what you're saying is true, Ava, we might be able to use this information to help Connor's case. Jacob nodded slowly. It certainly puts things in a different light. But Ava, you understand that by confessing to us, you're opening yourself up to potential criminal charges. I understand, Ava said softly. And I'm prepared to face whatever comes. I just want to make things right as much as I can. As they continued to discuss the legal implications, I found myself staring out the window, my thoughts in turmoil. Ava's confession had thrown everything into question. The narrative I'd constructed, the justifications for my actions, suddenly, it all felt shaky. I turned back to the room, my decision made. We need to take this to the authorities, I said firmly. All of it. Harrison's crimes, Ava's embezzlement, everything. Ava looked up at me, surprise and gratitude warring on her face. Connor, I held up a hand to stop her. Don't. This doesn't change what happened between us, Ava. But if we're going to end this, we need to end it right. No more lies, no more secrets. Jacob and Nina exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. I'll make the necessary calls, Jacob said, reaching for his phone. As the wheels were set in motion, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The truth was finally coming to light, for better or worse. Whatever happened next, at least it would be honest. The game had changed once again, but this time, I was determined to play it by the rules. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, police interviews, and media scrutiny. The story of Harrison's attempted murder, coupled with Ava's confession of embezzlement and blackmail, had become a local sensation. Every day brought new headlines, new revelations, and new challenges to face. I sat in the back of the courtroom, watching as Harrison was brought in for his sentencing. He looked haggard, the confident swagger he'd once possessed completely gone. Our eyes met briefly as he was led to his seat, and I saw a flicker of something, remorse, fear, before he quickly looked away. The judge's voice rang out, silencing the murmurs of the courtroom. Harrison Brooks, you have been found guilty of attempted murder, blackmail, fraud, and numerous other charges. The severity of your crimes, coupled with your lack of remorse, leaves me no choice but to impose the maximum sentence. You are hereby sentenced to 25 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. A collective gasp went through the room. I felt a complex mix of emotions, relief, satisfaction, and a strange sort of pity for the man whose life was now effectively over. As Harrison was led away, I caught sight of Ava on the other side of the courtroom. She sat alone, her face a mask of guilt and sorrow. Her own trial was set to begin next week, and while her cooperation had earned her some leniency, she was still facing significant jail time for her role in the embezzlement scheme. Outside the courthouse, I was immediately swarmed by reporters, their questions coming in rapid fire. Mr. Blake, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you have any comments on your ex-wife's upcoming trial? What are your plans now that this ordeal is over? I held up a hand, silencing the crowd. Justice has been served today, I said firmly. Harrison Brooks will pay for his crimes, as will anyone else involved in this situation. As for my plans, I'm looking forward to putting this chapter of my life behind me and focusing on the future. With that, I pushed through the crowd, making my way to where Jacob and Nina were waiting. Well done in there, Jacob said, clapping me on the shoulder. You handled the press like a pro. Nina nodded in agreement. It's finally over, Connor. You can start to move on with your life now. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past months finally starting to lift. Yeah, I suppose I can. We made our way to a nearby cafe, seeking refuge from the prying eyes of the media. As we settled in with our coffees, Jacob leaned forward, his expression serious. Connor, there's something we need to discuss, the divorce settlement. I raised an eyebrow. I thought that was all finalized months ago. Jacob nodded. It was. But given Mia's confession and the new information that's come to light, we have grounds to revisit it. We could push for a more favorable distribution of assets, considering the financial damage her actions caused you. I sat back, contemplating his words. A year ago, I would have jumped at the chance to extract every penny I could from Mia. But now, after everything that had happened, I found myself hesitating. What do you think I should do? I asked, looking between Jacob and Nina. Nina shrugged. Legally, you're well within your rights to go after more. Mia's actions cost you a lot, both financially and emotionally. True, Jacob agreed. But there's also something to be said for closure. Dragging this out further might not be in your best interest, emotionally speaking. I nodded slowly, mulling over their words. Finally, I made my decision. Let's leave it as is, I said. Mia's going to have enough to deal with when she gets out of prison. I don't need to add to that. Besides, I'm doing fine on my own. It's time to close this chapter for good. Jacob and Nina exchanged surprised glances, then smiled. I think that's a wise decision, Jacob said. It shows real growth, Connor. Nina raised her coffee cup in a toast. To new beginnings, she said. As we clinked our cups together, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road had been long and painful, but I'd come out the other side stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever life threw at me next. Later that evening, as I sat in my home office, I found myself reflecting on the tumultuous journey of the past year. The betrayal, the anger, the thirst for revenge, it had all seemed so consuming at the time. But now, with the perspective of time and the weight of justice served, those feelings had faded into something more manageable. I opened my laptop, staring at the blank document before me. For weeks, I had been toying with the idea of writing about my experiences, of turning this painful chapter of my life into something meaningful. Now, with the legal proceedings behind me and a fresh start ahead, it felt like the right time to begin. My fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before I started to type. I never thought I'd be the guy with the cheating wife and the revenge plot, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. This is the story of how I lost everything, fought back, and in the end, found something I didn't even know I was looking for, myself. As the words flowed onto the screen, I felt a sense of catharsis. This wasn't just an ending, it was a new beginning. Whatever came next, I was ready for it. The game had changed, and so had I. For the first time in a long while, I was excited to see what the future held. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe to the channel to watch my next videos and share with me your opinion, what you would do in my place.